All right, good evening, everyone. This is the March 2nd Portland Clean Energy Fund Grant Committee meeting. It's going to be a quick one today, just 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. So we're going to jump in and get started as we do every time with some virtual participation guidelines and check-in. These committee meetings are open to the public. The public is invited to provide comments just a few minutes before we jump into things. So in just a few minutes, if you want to provide comments, please indicate that you want to just by putting it into the chat and if you're logged in over Zoom. We're also going to do introductions. So if you want to introduce yourself, just go ahead and put your name. If you have an organizational affiliation, and if you have gender pronouns you want to share, put those into the chat as well. And then when we get through with committee and staff member introductions, we'll just go ahead and read out who from the public is also in attendance. We ask that the chat function and the raise hand function and that the video be limited to committee members, except for the introductions part and indicating if you want to give public comment, but otherwise that they're limited to committee members using them or staff members who are actively participating in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded and it is also being live streamed on YouTube where it can be watched later. There's also live transcription available, and if you're logged into the meeting via Zoom, you can find that by going to your Zoom menu bar and going to the 3 additional dots, clicking on those, and then scrolling down to view full transcript. So before we go into, start with the reading out the guiding principles and jumping into the meeting, let's get introductions out of the way. Just a reminder for anyone who may have logged onto the meeting a little bit late that you can introduce yourself by putting your name, if you have an organizational affiliation, and gender pronouns into the chat, and we can introduce you that way. So we'll start with Michael.
Hello, I am Michael Eden Hill, he, him pronouns, PCEF committee member. Hope everybody's having a great day.
Faith?
Hi all, I'm a committee member as well. My name is Faith Graham and I use she, her pronouns.
Jeffrey?
Hi everyone, Jeffrey Moreland, he, him, committee member.
Ranfis?
Happy March, everyone. My name is Ranfis Giantino Viatoro, committee member, he, him pronouns.
Denise?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shanice Clark, she, her pronouns, committee member.
Megan?
Hi, everybody. Megan Horst, she, her pronouns, committee member. And sorry, I'm off camera for the first part, but I hope to join via camera in a little bit.
Thanks, Megan. And we have 2 committee members who are excused tonight, Maria Sippin and Robin Wang. And we'll move on to staff. James, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, good to see everybody tonight. James Valdez, he, him pronouns, PCEF staff, and will also be your tech support for today's meeting.
And I am Katie Lister, she, her pronouns, and I am also PCEF staff. And I will hand it over to Sam to introduce himself and members of the public.
Folks, Sam Brasso here, he, him pronouns, and with the PCEF team. And we've got a few folks with us here tonight. We've got Christine Lobergot, our PCEF communications manager, with us in the audience. Hi, Christine. We've got Jenny Hall here, she, her Energy Trust of Oregon Solar Program. And we've got Zach Thermax, hopefully I got that right, from Community Energy Project Weatherization. So good to see you here, Zach. Okay, it's good to see you all this evening. And oh, go ahead. Send it back to you, Katie.
Did we want to open with the guiding principles? I'd like to ask committee members to volunteer to read a portion of those, and then we will jump into the meeting.
I'll start. Focused on climate action with multiple benefits. Invest in people, livelihoods, places, and processes that build climate resilience and community wealth, foster healthy communities, and support regenerative systems. Avoid and mitigate displacement, especially resulting from gentrification pressures.
Justice-driven. Advance systems change that addresses historic and current discrimination, center all disadvantaged and marginalized groups, particularly Black and Indigenous people.
Community-powered. Trust, community knowledge, experience, innovation, and leadership. Honor and build on existing work and partnerships while supporting capacity building for emerging community groups and diverse coalitions. Engage with and invest in community-driven approaches that foster community power to create meaningful change.
Accountable. Implement transparent funding, oversight, and engagement processes that promote continuous learning, programmatic checks and balances, and improvement. Demonstrate achievement of equitable social, economic, and environmental benefit. Remain accountable to target beneficiaries, grantees, and all Portlanders.
All right, thank you all. Okay, we've done introductions. I did not see anyone indicate that they wanted to provide public comment in the chat, and so we will move on to the main part of the meeting. Before we did that, I think we wanted to have a quick check-in, though, about the potential to move committee meetings from, we have been having them the first and third Wednesday of every month, and we'd like to, in order to accommodate one of our committee members' schedules, at least for the spring and going into early summer, move those to the first and third Wednesday. And so I wonder if folks could just, the first and third Thursday of the month. And so I'm wondering, same time, 6 to 8 p.m., if folks could give me a thumbs up or just like indicate verbally if that works for them. Faith?
Sorry, that was my indication. Katie, I didn't have another way of indicating to you. I'm good.
That's true. Okay, so I see Faith is good. It looks like Michael is good. And Jeffrey, does that work for you? Shanice, does that work for you?
It should work for me. There could be some conflicts on Thursday nights, but I should be able to make most of them.
Okay, great. Francis? Yep. Okay, thumbs up. And Megan can't give a thumbs up because she's not on camera yet, but I indicated earlier that that would work at least in the sort of shortish term. So we can move on to the first item on the agenda, which is to talk about committee member roles and recruitment. And I'm going to hand it off to Sam. And maybe, Sam, you can, as you go through, just also remind committee members of what decisions we need to have made tonight, or I can do that if you want.
Thank you, Katie. And I realized I just got disconnected from my audio for a bit there, so I'm assuming folks said it Thursday it works, but otherwise, good. Thank you. All right. So tonight we've backed up and got a handful of decisions we're hoping we can make with the committee, and so let's go ahead and move into the next slide, and I'll just outline what some of those decisions are. So tonight we're hoping we can make a decision on a new co-chair to be a co-chair alongside Michael. So we'll go through that decision in a second after we talk about the responsibilities in the next slide. We also are hoping for a decision on the recruitment and nomination plan. So we provided an update with minor edits. We did send that yesterday, so I'm happy to walk through what the edits were related to the recruitment plan. But what we'd also need is a nomination subcommittee. And I know committee members have already expressed interest, so I think we have a sense for folks that are interested in that, but we need to just make a decision on that. And then other areas of committee need are the bylaws subcommittee. as well as, and I think this is less a decision, but just like to see interest, since this is support for the team, for the grant review audit panel. This was the body that, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but this was the body that was going to sit along staff as we go through our additional review phase that we're implementing right now, and help us and be able to help hear some of the challenges or the adjustments we're making on some of the grant proposals. And Robin is currently on there, and so we'll talk about that shortly as well. And then later on, you'll hear about a little overview on our community distribution partner proposals. But there's no decision expected there. Okay. Next slide.
And just so Megan knows, I did just mute Megan because it sounds like we may have come on her phone accidentally off mute. So please text her. Let me know if that's a problem.
Okay. So as you all know, we're on the slide here, Megan, if you can't see the screen, where we're just talking about the co-chair role. And so essentially, Maria, for reasons that some of you all know, her schedule has changed and can no longer serve in the co-chair role, and has stepped down from the co-chair role. So we need another co-chair to provide Michael a sounding board and not leave him alone with us. And so as you all know, it is 1-year terms for the co-chair role with a maximum of 3 years. So we will be coming up and talking about Michael's term here in a little bit. But the responsibility for the co-chairs are defined in the bylaws, but there are additional roles that were identified in the working agreements, which we've never finalized. And so that's why one of the other tasks later on will be for another person to join the bylaws subcommittee, so Michael's no longer alone there, and we can finish out that work on the working agreements. So I'll just give you all a moment to read the responsibilities in the bylaws. And Megan, maybe just give us a nod if you want us to read these out, but I want to give folks a moment to just see what these roles are. And then we can just keep this short and easy and turn over and see if anyone's, if folks are ready to make nominate someone to serve as a co-chair. So does anyone have any questions about the co-chair role?
Megan?
Hi, yeah, sorry, it's a little awkward when I can't see folks. My question is, as you all know, I've expressed some interest in it, but I just want to check in. Sam, I sent an email request asking you this, but regardless of who is in the co-chair role, I'm hoping for additional support in terms of communications, and particularly anticipating lots of communications needs ahead for co-chairs. And yeah, so the question is there staff capacity to provide at least a little training and orientation and maybe, yeah, help on the communications front?
Yeah. I think we're in a better position to answer that now, Megan. We now have Christine Lobergat serving as our interim communications manager. And I didn't set Christine up to know that she may be going on, but I'll just share a little bit, and Christine, feel free to jump on if you'd like. But Christine has been at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, has history with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability for 15 years working on our communications team. And we've talked about some additional supports we can bring on to support the committee. So one, you have Christine on board, but we also at the Bureau have on Megan Reed, who's recently joining as our Bureau of Planning and Sustainability Communications Manager. And that was a position that was vacant for well over a year. And so that's just additional capacity we have within the Bureau within the past several months. So we, and summarily, we're also working on bringing on a contractor to provide additional comm support. So I just want to say, yes, one, that's something we've been thinking a lot about, and you all will have that, or at least have a direct liaison that you can connect with by way of Christine when media comes up, or we need talking points, or just prep support prior to connecting with media. Hey, Megan, does that answer your question? I just want to make sure you feel like that.
Yeah, totally. It's good news both for the co-chair roles, but also just generally.
Yes.
So maybe just as a reminder of folks who have expressed interest, Megan has expressed interest in the co-chair role. Shanice and Jeffrey have indicated interest in serving on the nomination subcommittee, and Ranfis has indicated interest in serving on the bylaws subcommittee. And so what we're looking for is a proposal, or 3 proposals actually, to nominate either those folks or for other people, if there are other folks who have interest in any of those roles, to indicate their interest so that we can get a decision and get those folks official. Michael?
I would like to, I don't know, what do we say? I would like to propose that we make Megan Horst our co-chair on a 1 to 3 year term of service.
Okay. We can start by doing a temperature check, just as a reminder, because there are 6 of you here, we will need 5 folks to be able to make a decision. So we'll do a temperature check, and then we'll go around and see if there is agreement or with the proposal. Faith?
I am good with the temperature check. I can't remember where we go with that. I'm warm.
I don't know.
And I agree with the proposal if we just want to go straight to that. So however you want to.
I think that we can probably, let's go just straight to whether you agree with the proposal or you think that more discussion is needed. If more discussion is needed, we can open it back up. So Faith
I agree.
Is in
Thank
agreement. Great. Jeffrey?
I agree.
Denise?
Unmute button. I agree.
Ranfis?
I agree.
And Megan?
I agree.
All right. One decision down. We'll have Megan's crown delivered shortly. So the 2 remaining subcommittees that we wanted to have appointments to were the nomination subcommittee, and that would be assisting with bringing on new committee members, the committee member who is going to replace Jeffrey, and then the committee member that's going to replace Amanda. And the folks who have indicated interest in that are Jeffrey and Shanice.
I think we can show that on the next slide too. Or at least.
Oh, do you want me to go to the next slide? Oh, yeah.
And so, and maybe what I'll just before Faith, I think just because we started the conversation, let's certainly talk about the nomination subcommittee, but I'd love to not miss theirs. I know there's a few points that folks want to raise relating to the recruitment plan. So I think just to keep the conversation going the way we set it up, let's see if there is, if folks are ready for a proposal for the nomination subcommittee that would be working with us on making a nomination for new committee members to the full committee.
I saw Faith's hand, and I also saw Ranfis's hand, but then it went down. So
it sounds like we're ready for a proposal. Or so I propose that we approve Jeffrey and Shanice to serve on the nomination subcommittee.
Great.
I'm just going to go ahead and say, I propose that we ask that we approve Jeffrey and Shanice to serve on the nomination subcommittee, and that we ask that we approve Ranfis to sit on the bylaws subcommittee.
All right, Faith, making it happen. Is there any conversation? Any other comments, folks? No. All right, let's move on. I'll just run through, and we'll you can indicate whether you agree, want to abstain, or oppose the proposal. I'll start with Michael.
I agree. Welcome to the bylaws, Ranfis.
Jeffrey?
I agree.
Denise?
I agree.
Ranfis?
I agree. And half joking here, can we also entertain a motion to create a crown for Megan as co-chair? Just as was mentioned, but no, just kidding. I agree. Thanks.
Right, and Megan.
I agree. And there'd have to be a crown for Michael too. But also, I'm not quite sure if that fits all of our committee needs. I agree with those, but did we fill out the audit one? So that's a second statement not related to me agreeing. I do agree.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that there's a little bit, maybe just a little bit more description that is needed of what that work is. Sam, did you want to talk about that now or jump into the into the sort of recruitment plan?
Let's just jump into that now and come back to the recruitment plan in a second, since we're kind of on the same thread here. The grant review audit panel. So, you know, on your January 19th meeting, you all approved our additional review process that we've designed for this current round of proposals that we're reviewing. And as part of that, there were certainly a lot of questions around how staff was going to implement that. And I think a desire for a little community engagement and a little committee support in that process. And so we talked about having what we call a grant review audit panel that would be sitting aside, meeting with staff weekly, starting really in a couple of weeks, in order to get to hear some of the ways in which we are communicating and suggesting changes to proposals that have come in order to address some of the risk that we see. So that's the ask is really about, I would say, about an hour meeting, starting pretty shortly in a couple of weeks, for about probably 2 to 3 weeks. Robin is already on there, but we don't have originally, I think Maria was originally on the original audit panel, but this is just focused on this front end. And so we're just looking for someone else to join alongside Robin that we would meet with weekly and talk about those adjustments and provide feedback.
Faith?
Yeah, I just was going to ask clarification, and Sam, you just referenced it as well. This is not the same audit committee that is going to be looking at those that don't go to panels, to review panels.
It's not, and this one gets more complicated. Let's almost not talk, because that the
Okay.
reason is because we were short committee members, and so that's the reason we're going to rethink that back end piece of it. But yes, it's really the focus for this role is then this next few weeks where we want to make sure we have an additional committee. I think there was interest within the committee and want to see if there are other committee members that would like to sit alongside staff in addition to Robin.
Megan?
I'm just raising my hand to say I can sit alongside Robin on this short-term committee, unless there's a lot of other interests. I'm happy to cede.
It doesn't look like there is a lot of other interest, so I think that you probably have the spot. Ramses, I see your hand.
Yeah, just kind of a open question here in terms of some of these committees that we're creating. Knowing, I think it's not specific to this, but just over time as we're creating different committees, especially if they're short term, if they require it being just PCEF committee members participating, or if there's opportunities to delegate some of these roles, potential community members. So Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I don't think a determination now, but I think it's just more of an open-ended question.
Yeah, there certainly can be advisory bodies, and there can be public members that participate in the subcommittees. And we ran into this, Ramses, with the reporting and evaluation subcommittee, and we saw the city attorney's kind of opinion on that, and which is how we're able to have Anissa participate as kind of a non-voting member of the subcommittee, the reporting and evaluation subcommittee. I would say though that you could there certainly is the ability to sort of have other bodies. They just would maybe not be called subcommittees if they were comprised of people who are not committee members.
And maybe, and I think what we'll do is also just clarify where, like, I think with the grant review audit panel, it's really a body that's there. It's not a subcommittee. They're not providing a recommendation to the full committee. It's really there to be a sort of a gut check and another set of eyes of groups of folks, particularly committee members that are familiar with how we're thinking through all this, providing support and a gut check for staff. So the reason we're not actually asking for a decision, but it's a valid point and something we're discussing. This is, I don't know if I've shared this. I mean, one of our colleagues, June Reyes, is on maternity leave. So this is an area of work that I know she, and it's work that we do have other folks sort of that we've been working with, but it's a conversation we should certainly revisit and think about programmatically how we support that. So if that works, maybe I just want to, just because I'm tracking time, maybe I want to just flag a couple conversations that have come up related to the recruitment nomination sort of plan. One, there's two asks that have come up from committee members directly to staff in the past couple of weeks, and they've really been around stipends and they've been around conflicts of interest. And so one, I think I want to address at least one, is that I think in checking in with our commissioner in charge and others, I think there is a greater willingness to, at least I think the direction I've heard, and I'm sharing that with you also, that you all can hear it, and I think I have a sense for where the group wants to go. But I think the direction I'm hearing is there's a willingness to be more open to conflicts of interest depending on the nature of the conflict. So I think with the recruitment plan, it's not explicitly stated there in this because we don't address conflicts, but previously in our previous recruitment, we'd said no conflicts allowed. And I think with your all's permission, we're going to be clear about asking about those conflicts so that we can actually have a discussion about the nature of those conflicts as part of and within the nomination subcommittee. So that's one update I wanted to bring to you all, since that was a clear ask, and I'm happy to elaborate on that further. And then the second conversation that has been raised is stipends. You all, as committee members, you all are, and we've got to think this is part of just building out our internal infrastructure. We'll check in with you all, but you all are entitled to stipends of up to $500 per year. There are conversations within the city, within other regional governments, and quasi-governments around providing greater compensation, maybe not even compensation is not the right word, but greater stipends. And so I just want to acknowledge it's a conversation, and it's an important one that we'll engage in. I'd like to, for folks that are interested in that, and maybe the space to talk about that, maybe the bylaw subcommittee grant fees, because I'm noting your interest in it. But it's a conversation, and it's not one that I think it's one that many bureaus, as the city has over 100+ advisory bodies, is actively engaged in. And yet it may not be a conversation it's not a conversation I think we can come to resolution prior to this recruitment. And so my suggestion on this recruitment is maybe for us, if we have, with your permission, to be more explicit in this recruitment about the stipend being at least $500, and that it's an ongoing conversation. But I just know that given the conversations I've had with some committee members in the past week, that to go beyond that prior to this recruitment, it's not going to. In my judgment, it's not going to be possible to try to address that prior to this recruitment. But it's something that we're certainly open to talking through.
Megan?
Yeah, I'm just chiming in to say I think it's a good idea to include that 500, and that, there's discussion at the city. Like, I'm just enthusiastically supporting including that, because I think for a lot of folks that doesn't fully compensate their time, but it helps offset maybe some of the time costs especially for folks. Yeah. So enthusiastic support.
Ranfis?
No, I appreciate staff following up on these two threads. I think with respects to providing flexibility for community members and community leaders with lived experiences and who are potential grantees and who might have a potential conflict of interest in the future, I think it's great that we're exploring that. I think could be a great balance of being more detailed in disclosures around what are those potential conflicts of interest and how do we handle when those conflicts of interest arise. But I'm just a huge believer that with any kind of program, especially a program like PCEF, like we can't do justice on work related to the community without community involvement. So I think this is just a great issue to try to tackle and see how we can move participation within this committee. And I think the stipends is another thread that's just, I think, almost similarly related. Like, I don't think we can make this be a truly inclusive body to participate in this committee unless we push the stipend to address, potential barriers for why folks would participate, whether it's travel costs when things open up or childcare related issues. Like, I think there's just historical barriers here that I think we just need to be cognizant of that exists that prevent people from participating in volunteer leadership positions as this. So I fully support just the exploration of these two conversations.
And so what we're looking for here is a proposal to sort of accept the memo that we sent out related to committee member recruitment. And it sounds like, Sam, I don't know if the 500, if that needs to be a little edit, or if that's already sort of clear in there.
It's not in the memo, so I'm just noting it for you all that we will include that in there and hearing just what you all have desired. That and a specific clarifying question on the conflict of interest, but it wasn't. We didn't speak to it in the memo at all.
So it would be a proposal to accept the plan outlined in the memo, with the addition of being sort of explicit about the $500 stipend and other supports that are available in the recruitment process.
Okay, I'll do it. I propose that we support the plan and approve the plan that's detailed in the memo with the addition of what we talked about here tonight, which is the addition of the $500 and the other support that's available, including a question relative to conflicts.
Okay, thanks, Faith. And let's, we haven't been doing seconds, but we actually don't technically have to. But if anybody wants to second the proposal, please feel free. Ranfis, I see you unmuted.
Second.
Thanks, Ranfis. Okay, so then I'll just ask for agreement, stand by, back, or oppose from first Michael.
I agree.
Jeffrey?
I agree.
And Shanice.
I agree.
All right, great. Thank you all. Megan?
Well,
I didn't call Megan. Because you're...
I didn't. Sorry, do you hear me okay?
Yes, now I can hear you. Sorry, I didn't see your face, and so I didn't call on you. Megan, apologies.
I'm just agreeing, and I know this is probably a little out of order, but besides just asking about the conflict, being really clear to folks that that doesn't eliminate them, that we're just looking for, we'll figure out, that we're figuring out a process about that. But because folks might interpret that as oh, they just might self-select out if there's a lot, an ask about conflict. So anyway, so I should have said that before voting. I'm sorry to throw that out of order, but I support the overall approach. And also, can someone let me in the Zoom room?
Oh, I see you. I'll let you in.
Thank you, Megan, for that. Let's see if Megan's already in. Okay, let me give Megan a second to respond. Megan, what I'll add just to what you had just said is I'll make sure that that's a part of the communication. When we, particularly with the recruitment within the Indigenous community, the Native American, Alaskan Indian community, this was something that came up consistently in our last recruitment. So it's going to be important that I flag that and say, this is no longer a criteria. We just want to understand what they are so that we can think through it. So I'll be clear about that because it was the thing, it was the number one thing that came up consistently as a barrier, as a significant barrier. Okay, we're running behind on time.
Yep.
Okay, so.
Oh, sorry, Ramses, I see your hand up, although we are running a little behind on time and we do want to get to this, just sort of at least the presentation part of the community distribution partner proposal. A lot of Q's and D's in that sense. Go ahead.
Yeah, my apologies. Just a question for clarity. Do we need to make a motion to appoint Megan on the audit panel, or is that just not needed?
Because it's not a subcommittee, it just is really some sort of a couple of committee members helping gut check staff through the process. Thank you though for checking.
Okay. All right. So.
All right, Sam, you ready?
Yeah. So with the community, we're finally here. This is something we wanted to bring you all really back in probably December or January, but we're here today with just giving you an overview of the community distribution partner proposals that have come in. We don't expect a decision tonight, but we will be coming back to you all for a decision in your next meeting on now March 17th, I think Thursday, March 17th. And so mainly here, I want to walk you through all just at a high level of what we have here. We are not naming the organizations here, but that's one of the questions. And at the end of it, we'll get to what additional information you're going to need in the next meeting in order to feel prepared to make a decision. So whether that's meetings with staff before that next meeting, or whether that's information you'll need in the meeting. So that's the aim here in walking through these next 3 or 4 slides. So as you all know, the applications were open from October 19th through November 30. We received at the end 11 applications or proposals to serve as a community distribution partner. Of those, we had a scoring panel comprised of staffing from the Housing Bureau, staff from the Bureau of Planning, Sustainability, Equity, and Engagement team, as well as staff from Multnomah County's Office of Emergency Management. They reviewed all eligible proposals and ultimately recommended 8 for funding for the community distribution partner role. 2 of them from the outset were ineligible, and 1 they did not recommend for funding. So that left they recommended 8 for funding. Of the 8 that they recommended for funding, 4 of them were affordable housing providers, and they described their interest or capacity was to distribute about 2,300 portable heat pump cooling units over a 5-year period. And then there's 4 non-housing community-based organizations, and they expressed a desire or capacity to distribute about almost 7,000 units over a 5-year period. And so what you see here is within these 8 organizations, we have a total distribution capacity of about a little bit over 9,000 units. We wanted ultimately within the program distribute 15,000 units, so we have a gap of about 6,000 units. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the next slides. Next slide. As part of our review work and as part of the ongoing conversations we've been having with our equipment purchasing partner, Earth Advantage, and just our overall review and just learnings and seeing the variety of cost within the proposals, we've come to the place where we believe it makes the most sense to have a defined cost approach for the community distribution partners, given the work involved, as well as just frankly just the ability to manage the program. But we did define and break down the costs based on this information. This analysis was conducted based on the proposals they provided and the breakdown of their costs, and we are recommending per unit reimbursements for the For the housing providers of $250. This is because a lot of times those housing providers, and this is based on the cost estimates they provided to us, and this is roughly in line with the majority of them. They're generally managing a fleet of housing, so to speak, and they've got facilities managers, and they're able to do it at a lower cost because they're oftentimes installing many of these in one building or so forth. So their proposals generally lined up with they were lower cost. From our community-based organizations that weren't housing providers, we're recommending a cost per installation of $400. Now here there was a wider distribution of costs, and notably there was two other providers which had cost estimates that were almost twice this range, and we've gone through and we're working through that. But right now we're following back up with a couple of those organizations that had substantially higher costs, and checking with them to see their interest at this cost at this cost. And it's for different reasons that they may have those costs, and that's something we're working through. And we should be able to provide more clarity on their interest in still playing this role at this cost level, at this price level, in the next meeting. But just want to share those are the two levels of reimbursements that as a program we're saying we believe makes the most sense. And from an allocation split that we're seeing based on the level of interest, we're seeing about 33% of the requests came from housing providers, and about 67% of the requests for numbers of units came from community-based organizations. So generally what we're saying is I think that that may be an appropriate, at least for now, as a starting place, appropriate distribution that scaled up for 15,000 units. That would be about 5,000 units from being distributed ultimately for affordable housing providers, and 10,000 through community-based organizations. So this is generally what you're going to be seeing. This is at a higher level. This is what you're going to be seeing when we come back to you all next week, or in a couple of weeks, with a little more resolution. And the additional services budget that we're outlining here is for things like weatherization assistance, going and doing follow-up check-ins with households. And this is a budget that we can detail, but it's roughly, to give you a sense, to do those light weatherization, weather sealing strips and whatnot, and provide those for a household. It's roughly $100 per household. And so there's a certain amount of units that we projected would take up those additional services. And so there's some outstanding questions around insurance and fulfilling sort of that gap, getting between 9,000 units and 6,000 units. So there's a TBD that we're working on and over the next couple of weeks to figure out what's an appropriate budget level to determine how we're going to fill that additional gap. But the next slide, we'll talk you through just how we're thinking about it. And so as we noted, we're just currently in conversations with our community distribution partners that applied around the defined cost structure and installation capacity. Notably, like I said, that there's 2 community distribution partners that had substantially higher costs than provided here, but we still believe that this $400 per unit makes the most sense. And then we outlined that we have about 9,000. Within the identified or recommended community distribution partners, there's about 9,000 units of installation capacity. And so we've got a gap here, and we're thinking through how do we meet that additional gap in the near term as well as in out years. And so in the near term, we believe we could meet that additional capacity, one, by doing targeted outreach to additional affordable housing providers. And so there are several that originally expressed interest but did not apply. And so that's an easy place to start there in terms of doing that outreach. And it's in a sense, it's easier in the first year because there's oftentimes those partners have facilities managers. They have a greater understanding of their building stock. And so it's just easier. But we believe in year 2 and beyond that we would start targeting additional and try to solicit additional community-based organizations once we've sort of worked out our process flow and how it's going to work with the community-based organizations, since that's going to be a little bit more challenging on that side. And then if we still have a gap, and this is what we'll talk through next week, where we want to talk through what it would look like to reach out and this would be through Earth Advantage, but to do an RFP for for-profit direct install contractors if we still have a gap, meaning that we don't have community-based organizations, additional ones interested in doing that installation. So there's a lot here that I just presented. And so I think we can jog back to to the prior slides, but let's move to the next slide and give a little space to one, just see any questions you have about what we've shared so far, understand what other kinds of information, what additional kind of information are you going to want to see prior to the next committee meeting or in the next committee meeting in order to be able to make a decision on the proposals. Will you want to see specific names of organizations that are being recommended for funding, or would you want to see characterizations of them in terms of the groups that they are working with? So just trying to understand what's the best way to bring this back to you all and present this and additional information that'll be helpful for you all to feel comfortable in making a decision.
Faith?
Yeah, just not super well thought out comments. So, bear with me as I babble for a little bit. I think what's most important for me is to understand why there were some that didn't qualify. So I don't need to know names, but it would be interesting to know what was the, what were those things that made somebody not qualify, the 4 applicants that we had or 3 applicants we had that dropped out. I'm really, the thing that I'm most curious about is not what I need or for this group to make a decision and to make a suggestion. But like, why did we get so few? That seems really odd to me. And especially on the housing provider side, this seems like such a straightforward, easy ask and an opportunity. But so I am a little surprised by that, and something that we'll learn on the back end, but it has nothing to do with this particular solicitation or what we need to make the decision. I like the idea that we don't need to know the specific partners, so long as we know that the criteria that were used to identify whether someone was qualified. And hopefully we do get to find out who they are after the decisions are made, so that we can reach out and find out information from them, right, and how it's going. And I'm sure that will just be part of what will be public knowledge, obviously, after a grant is made or after a selection is made.
Megan?
Yeah, this is exciting that we're getting closer to implementing this. Similar to Faith's comments, I too like the idea of not hearing specific, or that we don't need to be engaged in the weeds of specific names. But I do think it'd be helpful just to understand the types of groups and the geographies that these 8 would serve. And it's very likely they won't serve all of Portland or every group. And so I don't think we're expecting that, but to understand what gaps are for future coverage needs. So I think that'd be helpful to understand. Another thing is some thoughts about I guess I'd want to hear a little bit more, although it's not really, more about the high costs that you were saying, that 2 of the organizations had high costs and that you were kind of in deliberations with them. I'd want, follow up on that. And also kind of some understanding of why, I guess just a little bit of insight. I think the cost ranging and coming up with a fair and equitable approach makes sense to me, unless there's some outstanding circumstance. And then I had a 3rd point that has escaped me. I wrote the first 2 down, and then anyway, so maybe it'll come back to me, but those are the 2 for now. I guess kind of similar to Faith's point about not a lot of response, I guess, and also aligning with my hope to understand coverage, is that I guess I want to know, have we missed potential groups in this, potential communities? So your reflections on that would be helpful, particularly thinking of our priority populations. And those that were outlined as most at risk of heat events. Like that overlap is really important to me. So is this group of people best serving the folks that you all told us were most impacted during the heat waves last summer? Are we hitting that target well with these 8 groups?
Thanks, Megan. Michael?
Yeah, hi. I was also wondering if going forward, if we'll still have 6,000 more, if there will be some time to think about some alternative distribution methods. I know that I was just talking to an SEIU organizer, and in California, they're doing portable heat pump distribution through home healthcare providers that are hitting Medicare, Medicaid, low income folks that are most affected already, and are being trained to put them in, and it's boosting their income as also very low paid skilled workers. So if I don't know if then that's just thinking forward, not right this second, but if in 2 years we need to get another 6,000 out the door, if we have other than going straight to for-profit contractors.
I think these are all wonderful
Thanks,
questions.
Michael.
I think these are all wonderful questions, and we'll be able to follow up on these questions. What I'll share from a near term, what we're seeing, from a near term in terms of this first year, as you all know, we're delayed in getting equipment. So there's still this question mark of how much equipment will we be able to get 3,000 units this year? If we're able to get 3,000 units this year, if I recall right, we had identified capacity for this year of about 2,500 units. So this year, most of the units are spoken for, but there's still 500 units that aren't through those distribution partners. And so that's where seeking out and filling it with affordable housing providers is sort of that first stage. But we have already heard interest from others in playing this role. So I think it will be helpful, Michael, to think through and strategize where we may want to make those soft outreach calls to other orgs and to see whether there's how that can look as we figure out what it means to work with our first cohort, and just kind of work through the kinks and then say, okay, this is what it's really taking for these existing community-based organizations to do this. Are you interested in also playing that role? So I know that we've got. Oh.
Ramses, and we have about 5 minutes, but we're good with this conversation. This is really valuable. Ramses?
Yeah, appreciate the conversation. Apologize in advance. I might have some contrasting thoughts to some of my colleagues, but I think it might be helpful just to actually get the names of the partners. I think that would be helpful, and just and if possible, just hearing whether it's just one person from the review panel, just hearing their perspective of how this process went, I think would be really helpful. I think in past where we've delegated this responsibility, it's I think just one gap of information is just hearing from that review panel, how they went through this process, and just any sharing of notes on the process would be, I think, just really helpful in that end. And I think, and I just take this from a perspective of this is a process that we're learning. So I think the more that we can learn about how we've, went into this process, how we've just discussing what is the approach for some of our community distribution partners, I think would be just helpful. But just wanted to at least share that. I think I'm open to if it's just a written summary or notes, but just something that I would aspire if we can do for the next meeting.
Ramphis, we'll think through what feels, I guess, appropriate, recognizing that we were asking them to be on a review panel, not necessarily come to it. So I think what we'll do is James and I will check in and talk through that. And at least one of the individuals was within our bureau, so we've got an easy colleague to check in with and get their sense. But we can certainly at least speak to why some of the folks didn't qualify and just elaborate on that and explain some of the thinking and thought process going through this and describe that.
I guess just a clarifying question. In the event that we make the determination and approve, would all the applications be posted?
Eventually, or in Ramphis, Chair, we are required to post all applications, and so that is, it's always the question of when do we have the wherewithal to do it in a way that it's we've for our main cycle we really packaged it up and set it up so folks could access really a different version of the portal that you all last year did the review on. So yes, we would eventually post that information and figure out what we have to redact. And so that would eventually be posted, but it would be sometime after. It'd be sometime after you all make the decision, so folks can retroactively review it.
Thanks, that's helpful. I think maybe just a follow-up question would be, and I don't think this changes how I would vote next week, but I think in terms of like feeling like I filled that due diligence part, would it be possible to share these submitted applications or at least notes from the reviewers on those applications?
I would prefer, in part because I want to honor not having folks feel like there's just it was many applications, many pages, and so I'm not and not to it isn't Ramphis. I think part of what I think when it is honor the work that those applicants do, we can certainly share. We will bring the scores and the summaries of all that and summarize the notes that they've provided. I think we can absolutely do that. I don't want to put this committee in a place where you all are re-evaluating the work that the review panelists did. I don't think that's necessary. I don't believe that was necessarily the intent. And so I think, maybe I want to just kind of get a sense what like to tease out a little bit more what you're hoping to get out of the out of that sort of information.
Just to get basic information on just the recommended slate, if you will. I think I agree with you on value of not reevaluating. That's not the intent at all on my end. So.
I think maybe if I could just note one of the challenges with giving information, with sending sort of like the applications to the committee is in documents that you all use to inform your decisions do need to be made available to the public when that happens. So we would need to, there's maybe just a little bit of a timing thing there. But I wonder, Sam, if what might be a good compromise or might meet the need is something that it's just providing a little bit more robust description of what each of the applications is proposing to do. That is, like kind of like a summary, not necessarily the full proposal, but a more robust summary of the proposal.
Yeah, I think we can do that. And I think we can do that in a way that speaks to the organizations and the work that they've done in the past. I think we can both summarize the organization, because I think that's what I'm hearing is wanting to get a sense who the organizations are, Megan, from you, like who they've serviced, who they're serving, what communities they're serving, and then hoping to serve. So I think we can spell those out along with and just break that down in a summary format that feels similar enough across applications so it can be also easy to read. That we can do.
And I see Michael's hand, and then just want to maybe have that be the last comment, if that's okay, so that we can close out the meeting and move into our training. Michael?
I guess I'm just going to make a quick comment, which is I think that we're all maybe a little worried about due diligence, given the first part of this heat pump process ended with so much consternation. That's just my comment.
It's what I'll share is it's a very valid, Michael, thank you. It's something that we've very much been thinking about as well. And so kind of, I think hearing the comments here, I think we can share some of that basic information around each of the organizations. So it's not necessarily giving it, but it'll give it, at least with the intent to give you all a better flavor for the kind of organization and the work that they've done in the past and the communities they've served. So you at least have that sense of the history of their existence and then what they're hoping to do here. I think we can absolutely spell that out, and then we can just detail a little bit more of what we did look into and what follow-up we may have done within an organization where we felt we needed to do more follow-up, because we did do that. I mean, we did take a lot of the elements of this additional review you all approved and applied that to this round as well.
Thanks, Sam. All right, I'm gonna close this out because we're 3 minutes over. Thank you all for making so many decisions and having such good input on the discussion. And members of the public, we're going to close the meeting out for you, and committee members, you're going to be staying on for a training. So public, thank you for participating. Please don't feel put out but we're gonna remove you from the meeting.
Can we take a real quick break, Katie, before transitioning?